My beloved brothers and sisters, today I want to talk about something very sensitive, something that affects families, children, and the Ummah at large. Many people, when they face difficulties in marriage, the first word that comes to their mind is divorce. But do you know, in Islam, marriage is a sacred covenant. It's not just a casual agreement that you can walk away from whenever you feel like it. Allah calls it a mythical gal, a heavy contract. So before you even think of divorce, pause for a moment and ask yourself, have I really tried everything? Have I prayed, shown patience, sought advice, and involved those who can help? Divorce is permissible, yes, but it is the most hated of the permissible things in the sight of Allah. And if it comes to that, remember, Islam teaches us to separate with kindness and justice, not with cruelty or revenge. In the Quran, Allah describes marriage as a mythic gal, a solemn and heavy covenant, Surah and Nis 402 went. These are not ordinary words. The same phrase is used in the Quran to describe the covenant between Allah and His prophets. This shows us that marriage in Islam is not a casual arrangement, not a temporary convenience, the sacred bond rooted in trust, responsibility, and divine witness. When a man and woman come together in marriage, it is not merely about living under one roof or sharing material resources. It is a union that connects two souls, two families, and two destinies. The Prophet said, marriage is half of your faith, Sabehaki. This highlights that marriage is not just about companionship. It is a means to preserve chastity, build family, and walk together on the path of faith. Reducing it to a temporary contract that can be abandoned at the first sign of difficulty undermines the very purpose for which Allah legislated it. One of the common problems today is that many treat marriage like a transaction. As long as it works for me, I stay. If it becomes inconvenient, I leave. This mindset is dangerous because it removes the sense of responsibility and accountability before Allah. Marriage requires patience, sacrifice, and mercy. Allah reminds us, and among His signs is that He created for you from yourselves mates, that you may find tranquility in them, and He placed between you affection and mercy. Surah Ar-Ram 32:1. The foundation of marriage is not selfishness, but mercy and tranquility. When we view it as a sacred covenant, we understand that challenges will come, but we are required to handle them with wisdom, patience, and the fear of Allah. The sacredness of marriage also means that spouses must protect each other's honor. Allah warns us not to take the bond lightly. To betray, humiliate, or oppress a spouse is to betray the covenant made in His name. The Prophet was the best example of this. He treated his wives with kindness, gentleness, and respect. He never struck them, never humiliated them, and always maintained dignity in the home. He reminded the believers, the best of you are those who are best to their wives, and I am the best to my wives. Tirmidhi. This shows that marriage is a test of character. If a person cannot show mercy and patience at home, how can they claim to uphold justice and faith outside? Furthermore, because marriage is a covenant, it should not be entered into or dissolved hastily. The Quran advises couples facing disputes to appoint arbiters from both families in the hope of reconciliation. Surah An-Nis 43:5. This process is meant to remind the couple that their union is not just about themselves, but also about their families and their responsibility before Allah. Divorce is permissible, yes, but it should be the final step after all sincere attempts at reconciliation have failed. When we understand marriage as a sacred covenant, we also understand that it is an act of worship. Caring for one's spouse, raising children, maintaining a peaceful home, all of these are acts that earn reward from Allah. Even small gestures of kindness between spouses are recorded as good deeds. The Prophet said that feeding your spouse or placing a morsel in her mouth is an act of charity. Bukhari, Muslim. This perspective transforms daily interactions into opportunities for reward. In short, marriage is not a temporary contract to fulfill desires or pass time. It is a lifelong covenant witnessed by Allah and grounded in mercy, love, and responsibility. When couples recognize this sacredness, they approach difficulties with patience rather than haste, with solutions rather than threats. They remember that their marriage is not only about personal happiness, but also about fulfilling a trust before Allah. For anyone planning divorce, reflect on this truth before breaking the covenant. Ask yourself if you have truly honored it. Marriage is not disposable. It is sacred, and those who protect it, honor it, strive to uphold its values will find the pleasure of Allah and barakah in their lives. Islam is a religion that acknowledges human weakness and the complexities of relationships. It does not bind people in unbearable situations, nor does it encourage them to sever ties carelessly. This balance is especially clear in the matter of divorce. While divorce is permitted in Islam, the Prophet made it clear that it is among the most disliked of all permissible actions. He said, "The most hated of lawful things to Allah is divorce." Abu Dawood. This statement captures the balance. Divorce is not haram, but it is a last resort, never to be taken lightly. Why is divorce permitted at all? Because Allah in His wisdom knows that not every marriage will succeed. Sometimes the differences between spouses are too great. At times abuse, betrayal, or neglect make the marriage harmful rather than beneficial. In such cases, forcing a couple to stay together would only bring misery, oppression, and greater sin. Divorce provides a dignified way out, protecting the dignity and well-being of both individuals. Thus, Islam recognizes reality while still emphasizing the sanctity of marriage. At the same time, the Prophet and the Quran warn against rushing into divorce. Why? Because marriage is a mithagal, a heavy covenant, not a casual contract. Ending it should only come after serious effort at reconciliation. The Quran instructs, if you fear a breach between them, appoint 2 arbitrators, one from his family and one from hers. If they both desire reconciliation, Allah will cause it between them. Surah An, Nisi 4:10-35. This verse highlights that before choosing divorce, families should be involved, effort should be made, sincere dua should be sought. The goal is to exhaust every path of reconciliation before taking the final step. Another reason divorce is disliked is because of the collateral damage it can cause. It affects not only the couple but also children, extended families and communities. Children in particular may suffer confusion, emotional strain or instability when their parents separate. While divorce may still be necessary in some cases, Islam calls for wisdom and patience to ensure that it is not done impulsively, especially over trivial disputes or temporary disagreements. Moreover, some people misuse divorce as a weapon of control or anger. They utter the word talaq in moments of rage without considering its weight and then regret it later. This reckless use of divorce is a grave sin. The Prophet taught that 3 things are serious whether spoken in jest or earnest marriage: divorce and returning after divorce. Abu Dawud Tirmidhi. This hadith warns us that divorce is not a game, it has real lasting consequences. To play with it or use it irresponsibly is to invite Allah's displeasure. Still, when divorce becomes the only option, Islam insists it must be carried out with fairness, dignity and justice. Allah commands either retain them in kindness or release them in kindness. Says Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 229. This means no revenge, no humiliation, no oppression. A man cannot strip his wife of her rights and a woman cannot betray the trust of her husband. Divorce must be handled with the fear of Allah, remembering that accountability awaits in the hereafter. This balance makes Islam unique. Unlike some traditions that forbid divorce completely, Islam does not trap people in toxic marriages. Unlike others that treat divorce casually, Islam attaches serious weight to it. It is lawful but hated, permissible only when necessary, but discouraged when based on impatience or pride. In summary, divorce is part of Allah's mercy. It allows release when marriage becomes harmful, but it is also a test. Will the believer use it responsibly, with wisdom and justice, or recklessly, with anger and negligence? The true Muslim understands that while divorce is allowed, Allah dislikes it, and so they treat it as a last resort. When a marriage reaches its end and divorce becomes inevitable, Islam does not allow bitterness, revenge, or cruelty to dominate the process. Instead, Allah commands believers to act with justice, dignity, kindness, even in separation. This principle reflects the very essence of Islam, mercy, and fairness in all dealings, whether in marriage, business, or even conflict. Divorce may dissolve the marital bond, but it does not erase accountability before Allah for how one treats the other. Allah says in the Quran, and when you divorce women and they reach their waiting period, then either retain them in kindness or release them in kindness. As Surah Al-Baqarah 2:229. Notice the emphasis. Whether you choose reconciliation or separation, it must be done with ihsan, excellence. The verse rejects any notion of cruelty, insults, or injustice. A spouse is not an enemy to be humiliated, but a person with whom you once shared love, trust, and intimacy. The Prophet also emphasized this principle. Even when separation occurred in his lifetime, it was handled with dignity. He reminded his companions that women are a trust from Allah and that men will be questioned about how they treated them. Similarly, women are reminded not to betray their husbands or use separation as a means of harming them. Islam insists that both sides fear Allah, remembering that they may no longer answer to each other in this world, but they will surely answer to Him in the hereafter. One of the clearest areas where justice must remain is in financial and parental rights. A husband cannot deprive his wife of her rightful dowry or maintenance during the iddah waiting period. Likewise, he must support his children and not use them as leverage against his ex-wife. Do not forget graciousness between you. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:237. Even in divorce, Allah reminds us of past kindness, of shared years, children and memories. That should be enough to prevent cruelty. Sadly, many divorces today are marked by hostility. Some men use talaq as a weapon, repeating it in anger to shame or control their wives. Others drag their wives into endless disputes over money or custody. Similarly, some women may withhold children out of spite or make false accusations to damage reputations. All of this is against the spirit of Islam. Divorce is already a painful process. To add injustice and cruelty is to invite Allah's anger. Instead, Islam calls for maturity and fairness. If the couple can no longer live together, let them part with dignity. A man should release his wife respectfully, giving her freedom and rights. A woman should leave without deceit or arrogance. Protecting the trust that once existed, both should prioritize the well-being of children, shielding them from conflict and ensuring they grow with love from both parents. The Prophet set the best example of kindness even outside of marriage. When he separated from some of his wives, he never dishonored them, nor did he allow others to insult them. His life teaches us that character is not proven when everything is easy, but when situations are difficult. True faith is shown when a believer can act with justice and mercy even while parting ways. In essence, divorce in Islam is not the end of dignity. It is simply the closure of one chapter and the beginning of another. How that chapter ends is a test of character. Will we choose anger and oppression, or will we choose justice and kindness? Allah has commanded the latter, and only those who follow it will find peace in their hearts and barakah in their future. So separation becomes necessary. Remember, this kindness is not optional, it is an obligation. Justice is not a favor, it is a duty. And the way you treat your spouse in divorce may be the very reason Allah shows you mercy on the day of judgment.